Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to our formal meeting, August 15th, 2018. Last meeting before the school year kicks off, very exciting. And we have many distinguished guests with us today for the first part of our workshop. Can't wait to get to their presentations. So without further ado, Dr. Boone, if you could lead us into the workshop.
Sure. Good afternoon, Dr. Gabriel, members of the school board, ladies and gentlemen. This is a continuation of our discussion with student data as we approach the various dates that the state will be rolling out official information. At this point, it's still considered preliminary, and we use it for internal use. However, part of what we've been working toward over the last couple of years is beginning to tell the story behind the numbers. What do we know? What we call voices from the field. So when Dr. Gabriel referenced a distinguished guest, we have a number of our principals today will help share some stories and some background information about what's going on in their schools. We'll also today look at the district-wide subgroup data and have some discussion with that and the impact of growth with that. So we have... We have today with us Drs. Bailey, Rogers, and Cataldo that will be leading the discussion in this work. And part of it is also will be the update as it relates to our literacy plan.
Okay, great. 1 second. If everybody could put their phones on vibrate so that we won't have any unnecessary interruptions. Wonderful. Ms. Campson, you had a question?
Yes, Dr. Ben. 2 weeks ago, I requested through the board chair to have school-by-school data, and have not received a response back from you, but I see that it is still not here. I know that you are saying that the state is not allowing us to do it, but I did call, and I talked to Shelley Loving-Ryder, the Assistant Superintendent for Student Assessment, and I wrote what she said down, and I read it back to her to be sure I was saying it accurately. She said, the state school Division of Education has no authority to restrict or prevent districts from relating student assessment data. However, they do strongly encourage the data to remain in-house with no public release until the state confirms the scores, which makes sense because we don't want to have preliminary data that may be incorrect. And when I said, but what that causes is it causes for the elected school board to not have access to the data. And she said, well, she didn't understand that because why didn't the superintendent share it with us in private? And I said, well, because we have Freedom of Information Act, and so it would be public as the superintendent shared with us. And she said, well, why don't they do what they do in most other districts? Why doesn't the superintendent share it in private with a couple of members at a time? Therefore, the board would be aware of the preliminary information, and yet when the information that had been corrected and finalized were released, it would not be the first time we're seeing it when we read it in the newspaper. So I wanted to share that information. I see it's not here. Thank you.
If I may respond, Dr. Gabriel.
Yes.
I met with both the chair and the vice chair. We had a meeting on Monday. This was one of the agenda items. I've shared with them the 2 phases of what we're going to accomplish. One is the state's official release date is August 22nd for the school-by-school data. It is my intention to make sure that every board member has access to that individually in advance of the release. That's what I committed to both the chair and the vice chair. And I also committed to 2x2 meetings in advance of the September 27th release of both accountability ratings and the ESSA ratings. And I certainly will ask Dr. Gabriel and Mr. Clinton to verify that that's what we discussed on Monday.
Yes, that is what we discussed, that she would be working on the 2x2 meetings prior to the September release of the school accreditation
But
data.
not prior to next week the August 22nd release of that data.
No, that's what I said. Prior to that, the time with opening schools, new teacher orientation won't allow me to do that, but I did say I will provide individually to board members the school-by-school information. What I have been trained in Virginia is that once we do a full report to the entire board, consistent with what Dr. Loving-Ryder was saying, that when you do individual conversations, you have not gone outside of the expectation that information be kept preliminary until the final report is being done. That was my commitment to, again, the board chair and vice chair, that will happen in advance of the 22nd release next week.
When I talked to Ms. Loving-Ryder, she said, as most of the districts do, why hasn't your superintendent already had a 2-by-2 meeting with those members of the board who wanted to have that?
All right.
I wrote it down and read it back to her.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and proceed with our presentation to get started with the results that we have right now.
Good afternoon, Dr. Boone and Dr. Gabriel, and members of the board. We have updated our SOL information to include student growth and student growth by subgroups. With me today certainly is Dr. Rogers and Dr. Cataldo and select members among our principals. Growth matters. I wanted to include this here just to let you know that the majority of this today is about growth, and growth is important. Growth is about knowing that all students can learn. Improvement certainly is about the changes that occur in assessment results, looking at a whole school or a particular grade. Individual student growth is a measure of students' academic progress from one year to the next. And certainly this information is very important as we share it with our parents and educators about the academic progress. What we have here is information on our SOL pass rates plus the growth. Certainly in the area shaded by the blue is our pass rates. The green that is on the top is the amount of growth that has been awarded to that particular grade level to then give you an overall combined rate. So if we look at grade 4, I believe that the pass rate is about 72.8, rounded to 73. The growth is about 8.3, giving it an overall combined rate of 81%. And the combined rate is what the state will be looking at, and that is the new measure moving forward.
I have a question. Do we know what's driving the shift in grade 6 and grade 8?
Not at this time. We are exploring that to see that, and so growth is on individual student basis. So we're looking at some of the things that happen specifically at the middle schools. We have shown growth in middle school performance, but that's something that our curriculum instruction people are talking over with their teachers and school personnel.
Okay.
But we can get an answer to you within the next week or two
It's
to let
just
you
a
know.
strange shift, how it's shifting,
Right.
and it picks back up at grade 7 to what's the kind of expected growth. But
Right.
then it shifts back down again at grade 8, and that's just kind of weird.
And if I may, I believe also writing factors in at grade 8 too. We don't have a writing test at 6 and 7. So when you factor in performance on the writing test, that could also be somewhat depressing
Okay.
overall the scores.
Let me just check with my colleagues. Dr. Catala Rogers.
I would tend to agree. I think what we see is not necessarily causation, but there may be some correlation, and we are certainly meeting to discuss all of the implications that attribute to some of the areas of growth as it relates to how students achieve from one grade level to the next level, especially in the middle school grades. So what you see from grade 6 is a reflection of the student performance in grade 5. We had discussions last year as to where we attributed our growth in grade 5, and typically what we saw similar this year was that we had a need to do some professional development in that area because we had a large number of substitutes in grade 5, and we still face that issue today. So what you see in grade 6 is a reflection of the growth of students in grade 5 in that green area. So we're continuing to focus on the middle grades and as far as the literacy component goes, and Dr. Cataldo will share a little bit more about that in his presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, we've definitely increased the, the level of our coaching and mentoring in the middle schools, because we know that middle schools, it's a transition year, it's the middle grades, and students sometimes can find some areas of difficulty, and then I think with the writing test too, which is an 8th grade tested assessment and 11th grade, but not 5th grade, so you see that difference there as well, because those are all factored in to account for the growth.
Okay.
Moving on to math, please note that we cannot calculate growth for grade 3 because it has to be progress from the previous grade to the current grade. So we don't have it there. And it's only for the grade level assessments. But in math, it does include Algebra 1 at the middle school level. And so what you see here are our math results. Same concept. The blue is the pass rate. The green is the growth. Added to it gives you the number that's on the top. In our middle school grade levels, grades 7 and 8, we have included the end of course results as well. So you look at that as a grade level as a whole and not a piece.
Same.
Same question. So
You
math, and
see
we
it.
have our math coordinator here as well. What you'll see, particularly for grades 5 and grade 6, middle school grades, we did have some realignment of courses, and that we attribute to some of the differences in student performance as well as we realign the subject matter that students are taught in those grade levels. So, would you agree? Okay.
Okay, Ms. Campson.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Although I'm sure they grew a lot.
Mhm.
That's something that prevents but I know with the old model.
If I may, when you look at the model, the new model for accreditation, you can have an area that falls in the green, yellow, and red options that we shared at the last meeting about the new process. And so you could actually be accredited if your math scores fall into that yellow range for 3rd grade, because they will also look at the overall piece. So in the red, yellow, green, you could have a yellow and green, you could have green in reading literacy, a yellow in math, and if the subgroup areas that they look at and the attendance fall within those areas, you could still be an accredited school. Levels 1 and 2 equal accredited schools. Level 3 schools are accredited with conditions. And so that's when you have more reds and not.
Average the 3, 4, and 5, so that grades 4 and grade 5 can pull. I can't believe I messed up again on it. Thank you. So grades 3 and 4 and 5 are put together on the new model the way they were on the old model, because I know many schools have had grades 4 and 5, which are traditionally much higher, balance out 3. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, they do that, and then they look at the subgroups also for the grade levels individually.
And so when they did that, they would do 4 and 5 with the growth information, like here, I'll say reading, 81 and 80, and then they would look at the 68 or so, and if the 4th and 5th pull that up with the growth part in, that would count.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The focus for reading this year was the full implementation of the literacy model, which you'll hear more about later in this presentation. Their main goal was or is, every day, every student should read more, write more, and discuss more. And so what you have before you is what we call adjusted numbers. They have been adjusted to include recovery, EL progress, and then in the combined rate, we have the growth data added to the benchmark. And so we have our subgroups, and 2 weeks ago, we mentioned or shared with you that we have 7 subgroups. What you see missing here would be the multi-race category, American Indian and Pacific Islander. They're all collapsed up into all students. And then we have our traditional subgroups, economically disadvantaged, English learners, students with disabilities, and we added information as it is included in the school board's accountability plan, the gifted learners and military connected. And so therefore you can see the trend. It is important to note that our students with disabilities did increase 10 percentage points with the growth model from 45 to 55.
Excuse me. Well, that's, I'm sorry. Can I ask a question? So while that's, of significant positive growth, can you explain why do you think that happened?
Well, I think that a lot of effort had been put in to support our students with disabilities. A lot of them, I would say that a lot of them did show growth from one proficiency level to the next, which is how you capture that. With respect to what specifically may have been done to support achievement, I'll defer to Dr. Rogers.
And I agree, and Dr. James Mitchell is here as well, but what I will share with students with disabilities and the teachers who teach them, both in what we call program classes, which is self-contained, as well as collaborative classes. We include them in all professional development that we have to offer all of our teachers in the area of reading and literacy. A strong focus on specially designed instruction, where teachers who teach students with disabilities create specialized lesson plans that are geared specifically for those students to help them in areas that they need to grow, particularly in the area of English and in math. So what I would say is that the performance, especially as it relates to growth, is a direct reflection of the emphasis that's been placed on instruction and literacy.
And I certainly want to add to that. Again, the idea is the literacy model is for everyone.
Right.
And so then how do we wrap the system of services around students who may need more support, such as students with disabilities and everyone else. The professional development includes our special education teachers. The system of support, additional supports also go for our students with disabilities. I know they're going to talk about it a little bit later, but we had just last week an extremely successful, our first district-wide literacy conference done within district, and again, we had principals, teachers, and special education teachers there. About 300 folks participated over 2 days with that, and so I think it's that focus that we've done around literacy, not making sure it's not haphazard, but it really is aligned and focused in a way that we can begin to see the driving of some results. And so what is encouraging about the students with disabilities, as we see all students improving, they are part of the all, and so that's significant also.
Okay. Ms. Basine and then Ms. Campson.
So when you stated that these numbers or the rates have been adjusted to include the recovery points, can you describe that, and should we expect that to look different from what the state posts, or will it be the same?
Well, the state is probably going to share certainly overall progress at the state level, and they will provide information via spreadsheets where you can manipulate the information according to your structure of analysis. And so they give you the base numbers to calculate, and then the percent rate that they have in there is the combined rate.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things that we notice. However, we just had a DDOT Region 2 meeting yesterday, and where the state came in and talked with us, and they shared that they're going to share the pass rate or the rate that is calculated for ESSA, or No Child Left Behind, which is a different formula than the combined rate.
And the second question I had was related to our students with disabilities. Of course, the growth, inclusion of the growth is heartening. However, it'd be good to see what the growth was the year before and the year before to really look at the comparison. Because when we look at apples to apples, it looks like it's been status quo. And so, I'd be interested to learn more about strategies, and also we talked about an accountability plan looking at subgroups within the category of students with disabilities, because we know that includes a range of disability categories, and I wonder if there is any subgroup that is driving that, or if there are resources that we might need to consider. So I'd be interested in looking at that data. That is something that we had agreed to look at via our accountability plan.
And if I may, it's going to take us a little bit longer to tease out the disability category. We have to go student by student in that one. But because the state reports it as the disability category, and then we will go back in and pull those out.
Right, so we'll go back and
Okay.
take a look at the data and see if we can calculate the growth for the previous year.
Okay.
Ms. Campson?
I was looking at this with a gap, through a gap lens. And I started with the African-American children, and I see that their pass rates are flat over the last 3 years. Certainly the growth helps them in the combined one. And not only that, when I was calculating the gap between the pass rate of the African-American children and the white children, which is one of the main gaps that we look at, we do have a majority of our students are African-American. I see 15, 16, I see a 21-point gap. 16, 17, I see a 20-point gap. 17, 18, I see a 23-point gap. So the scores are flat, the gap is flat, not seeing improvement there. And actually, I also looked at the learning disabilities, the students with disabilities, and there I do see improvement in the pass rate, but I see 15, 16, I see a 34-point gap, 16, 17, a 30-point gap, and 17, 18, a 28-point gap. Now, with the African-American and white children, we have those already pulled out. I assume that since what I had to do with the students with disabilities is I had to look at that gap against the all students, which I assume that they're also included in. So, first of all, I have a concern about the lack of progress there. But second of all, I'd like somehow to be able to do, or maybe you'll be doing that for us, the gap data with like Hispanic with non-Hispanic, rather than with all students. And economic, do you see what does that make sense? So that I'm really getting a true comparison, because the student with disabilities probably pulls down the all students a little bit. And so it make the gap maybe even be larger than we see it as. But, and I guess I need to ask Dr. Rogers this question. Based on this, I don't know if I assume, doing things like looking at the schools that have already started closing this gap and have big closures so that you can see what are they doing differently. That
And I
might
think
be-
you'll hear some of that today from at
because
least two of our principals.
the three-year trend here is low and flat.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
And in our Voices from the Field today, as well as we did last year, we intentionally brought in schools that were showing the progress with our students with disabilities, and to let them tell what their practices have been. And absolutely, we are sharing best practices and supporting that across the board.
And providing some additional training if the bright spot school, so to speak, is doing something that's different.
Yes.
And the principals are empowered to make some changes and implement their own strategies if that seems to be working.
Absolutely.
So hopefully, as the years go on, we're going to see the flatness of this and the hugeness of the achievement gap start to shrink.
All right,
Thank you.
let's,
Madam Chair, can I just add on to that?
yes.
So I agree with Ms. Campson, but I would add something I've talked about in the past, that as a part of this, while we're looking at pass rates, if you dig deeper into pass advance rates, you see gaps that are even more significantly pronounced than what we're seeing here. And then also when we, at whatever point in time we get to the school by school analysis, not only do you see gaps, for example, we talk about the white-black gap, but if you were to go back and look at the school profiles from last year and look at the SOL gaps, you could see white students on the north side of the city and gaps with white students on the west side of the city. And so I think we need to be able to look at that. And then the other thing that we've found is oftentimes in our division, economically disadvantaged students and African-American students tend to be significantly in the same group. And so don't want to lose sight of that. And then we also know that a significant portion of our African-American students are also attending the high-poverty schools in the high-poverty pathways with the least experienced teachers and all the things that we've been trying to work on. So I still believe that the accountability plan that we have, and hopefully in September or sometime soon, we get to see that big picture. The data that we have that goes beyond SOLs and looks at everything from climate surveys and all the other scores gives a much fuller picture than just looking at the rolled up SOL numbers. But I agree with you with your assessment.
And I agree with what you're saying, but we do need to have some hard data to be able to pinpoint what we do with our interventions. And also when I look at, the third grade, I feel concerned because we do not have a lot of instructional support for our teachers. We've cut back on our reading specialist significantly. And so I'm trying to figure out why these scores are staying like this, because those are the interventionists, the extra instructional support of the people that would be going into the school and providing that second lesson. So instead of 30 minutes out of an hour and a half block where the teacher goes to each of the three groups in their guided reading group, our lower performing students would get a second lesson. So instead of having 30 minutes of direct instruction and 60 minutes of reinforcement and independent work, they would have a full hour. And we all know from all the research that the best thing you can do to improve achievement is to put a teacher in front of the child and have a direct teaching lesson. So I'm looking at what's happening because when I saw how flat this was and how huge the gaps were, and I know they can be closed. Certainly the teachers at the school that I was principal of, those teachers closed that gap. I mean, our goal was down to 5%.
Okay. Let's keep things rolling because we have great presentations that we definitely want to make sure we get to. So Ms. Basine, and then let's see if we can let you get through a couple of slides uninterrupted.
Okay.
Ms. Basine?
I can wait till you get through.
Okay.
All right, sounds good, thank you. On to mathematics. Their focus was on improving mathematical literacy skills for all students, and they did this by aligning Tier 1 instruction to VDOE standards. They also attended planning meetings, data meetings, modeled and observed instruction, coached teachers, and provided feedback. And certainly this school year will be the new math standards in which they will be assessed in the spring of the year. Same concept with respect to the growth and the overall adjustments that were added to the percentages that you see here. On to science. Science is the third academic indicator, certainly in our accreditation as well as our ESSA. And so science does not have growth results that are a part of it. So we did provide, though, the same SOA adjustments. They do not have recovery, but the adjustments can be made with respect to when students show up during the school year and EL pass rates. History. Something new will be done with history. However, we will continue testing this school year. Maybe later in the school year, we will hear about our performance-based assessments is what we are transitioning to with respect to history. History is not included in the new methodology. However, for this year, for the old methodology, it is included for schools to meet or exceed the state benchmarks. Writing is in the same predicament. It will be kind of phased out, and it will become performance-based assessments. They're still deciding exactly what we may do. Some students with the high school level can substitute their tests with work keys. But this particular subject area assessment eventually will be phased out of the accreditation calculation. And certainly is not included in the ESSA, only reading.
Writing isn't.
So at this point, I will turn it over to Dr. Rogers.
Thank you. Dr. Gabriel, school board members, Dr. Boone. As Dr. Bailey has shared, the revised standards of accreditation do provide a more comprehensive overview of school quality that expands accountability beyond that of pass rates from the SOL test, high school graduation, and of course, completion of high school. Under the revised standards, by recognizing growth, the revised accreditation standards do provide a more balanced evaluation of schools that serve all students, and particularly those students who have been identified as students at risk. So if you recall, under the previous accreditation system, schools were subject to being perceived as failing, even if most students were making progress toward proficiency. And as such, in addition to the numbers, it's important for us to make sure that we paint a context that shares what some of the other stories are as related to student performance. So as again as mentioned in your last board meeting, we're certainly proud of the growth that our students, faculty, and parents have shown this past school year as it works toward looking at student growth from one year to the next. So this evening, we've asked Dr. Cataldo to come and give us a high-level overview of what we've been working on for the last couple of years with regards to our Norfolk Public Schools literacy program. And then we also have 4 of our fantastic principals who are here today to share some of the stories behind the numbers and talk about some of the strategies that they've implemented in their schools to foster a culture of growth. So without further ado, Dr. Cataldo.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Dr. Gabriel, Dr. Boone, members of the board. I'm very excited to be talking about our literacy plan and our literacy endeavors and provide you this update. This process has really been a multi-year process. We have followed kind of multiple steps and actually to get to the point of where we are now. So we looked at looking at redesigning roles of certain key groups. We also looked at establishing partnerships with outside entities. We looked at providing professional development, and then we also followed up with the coaching, a very strong coaching and mentoring piece. So I'm going to go into each of those areas and give a little bit more detail. So in redefining roles, we looked at the responsibilities and roles of our reading specialists, and we wanted to make sure that they were really the literacy leaders in their buildings. We focused on Tier 1 instruction with them. We also provided ongoing professional development. So we brought them together on a regular basis. They spent a full day getting professional development, really working on how to help coach their teachers and how to get their teachers where they need to be, being those true literacy leaders in the schools. So we really felt that they were an extension of what we were doing at the central office level. And then on just this past week, last week actually, we had the literacy conference. So they were all a part of that as well. So that was very successful. I'll talk a little bit more about that as well too. The second thing we did, we established partnerships. So we had multiple partnerships. We had a partnership with CERN, which is School University Research Network out of William & Mary. We also had a partnership with HMH. Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, they're the publishers of our textbook series that we use throughout K-12. In multiple subjects, not just in English or reading. We also looked at the University of Virginia, Curry School of Education, and received some support from them as well. There we go. The third piece was the professional development piece. We focused very heavily on K-2 teachers. We know that the grade level 3 students, that doesn't, if they have flat scores, they don't just start in grade 3. They need to have a strong foundation, K1, 2. So we focused on that, working with teachers, working on guided reading, components of the literacy block, Then we also focused from K2 to 3-5, and we looked at literacy block as well, and small group instruction, because we know that we need a guided literacy block to look consistent throughout the division. Then we looked at 6-8, so we looked at middle schools, and we provided training in explicit instruction, gradual release model, teachers as facilitators, and improved student engagement, and really also looked at culturally relevant text as well. And so this level of coaching, much of this is provided by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, and along with our own reading specialist and Gwen Collins, our senior coordinator. The fourth piece was the ongoing classroom coaching in the elementary schools and middle schools. So we had ongoing coaching. We had HMH coaches come into our classrooms. They modeled what the teachers should be doing. They watched the teachers and coached them on how to be more effective and how to improve and increase student engagement. So that piece there, that worked out very well, because we had a few schools that we had started that off with, and then the following year we had additional schools that really saw an improvement in how their level of teacher capacity. So a little bit of the overview. Talk a little bit more about our partnership with CERN. So the very first thing we did, along with professional development, we knew we had to really look at our curriculum. We had to look at our level of instruction. Thank you. And we had to look to see what we were really doing in the classrooms. So we partnered up with CERN out of William & Mary, and we had a literacy audit. So they provided a literacy audit to us, which took almost the whole year. It took a while, but what they did was they surveyed 1,400 teachers. They actually observed 328 K-8 classrooms. So they walked into classrooms with Gwen Collins, with other department chairs and people that are already part of the MPS staff. They walked into that many classrooms. They also conducted 11 focus groups. So focus groups with principals, all the stakeholders, principals, parents, teachers, administrators, really looking to see what it was that we wanted out of literacy in Norfolk Public Schools, and where we were and where we wanted to get to. So we looked at those pieces. There was a presentation of the findings, I think back in August 2017. I think I presented some of that information as well as Dr. Rogers. The HMH coaching piece, as I said, was very popular. It's student-centered coaching. We did that in 14 of our elementary schools and all 6 of our middle schools last year. With the really the teachers were extremely happy about having that level of experience and being able to build on their teaching, their pedagogy, and become master teachers. We also partnered, as I mentioned before, with UVA. We looked at an audit of the K-2 reading and writing assessment. So we have reading and writing guides, and we had them look at those guides and evaluate them, because we want to make sure that what is taught is what's tested, and that it's part of the curriculum and it's something that's well established. The literacy model we now have has been complete. But we know this is a living document. We know this is a document that's going to change every year. The 2017 standards just came out this past year, so we have much of those things incorporated. But we know there's going to be a change next year with the new standards with testing. So we really continue the curriculum work, and we focus on many of the key pieces to again have our students move forward. Now, what you see on the screen there is Read 14.2. It's very similar to, if you're a runner, and then, 13.1 or 26.2. But this is Read 14.2, and the significance between with 14.2 is that studies have shown that students that read 14.2 minutes per day score in the 80th percentile on standardized assessments. So we thought that would be a great kind of a catchy thing, and if you walk around the schools, you'll see 14.2 a lot of different places. We had shirts, banners, and lots of things to really show that 14.2, and it was something that's very easy to catch on to. And schools, when they drop everything and read and do different things like that, they really structure that around that 14.2.
Thank you, Dr. Cataldo. So to continue voices from the field, we have asked 4 of our principals to come and just share briefly what their stories are behind the data that they have before each day. They've done some really creative things in their buildings, and as Ms. Campson shared, they spend a lot of time sharing strategies and resources and ideas with each other on their own, but also strategically in the context of their cluster groups. And I know Dr. Gray's cluster group met, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday, and in their agenda, they did have time to talk about some of the strategies that work. They're doing some really creative things, particularly in the area of science, as well as with literacy. So I am going to ask Ms. Capel to share some of the great things that she's done at her school.
All
Norvia
right.
L.
All right, thank you. Hello, thank you for having me, Dr. Gabriel, school board members, and my fearless leader, Dr. Boone. All right, so if you notice, right there, we are the word nerds, so that's kind of our focus, and everything is literacy. So anything with vocabulary, we're hashtag word nerds, so that's something we are kind of pushing along. Which one do I press, this one or that one?
The right. There you go.
Am I crazy?
Right that way.
Here we go. All right. All right, so what I did is I kind of shared some preliminary results. And if you notice, last year in science, we finished with a 61%. This year, we moved up to a 78%. So some of those things that I think that cause us to grow is for the science cluster group, Dr. Gray came up with an idea that like, hey, why don't we stop doing first aid? Let's figure it out from the get-go. How do we move our science scores? So what we did is we clustered. Norview went with Sewell's Point. Sewell's Point tends to be, does very well in science. And Oceanaire, because Oceanaire has a large ELL population, and our ELL population has tripled. So, we're dealing with some things that we haven't really dealt with before. So what they did is we got the teachers together, they met once a month, and they led their meetings. So, like, I would just go, in case they want the principals, I would sit back, do my own thing, answer questions, send an email to the principals if they need us to do something. Other than that, the teachers did everything. So it kind of changed as the year progressed. So in the beginning, they were just sharing ideas. Then they got a Google Drive together, and they split it up by strand. They had assessment data, like assessment questions, homework questions, hands-on experiments, that type of thing, anything that they helped. And it was nice because some of the teachers came and they're like, look, I'm not really great at, doing assessment questions, but I'm great with review games. So they all kind of brought their own things and shared. And so they really kind of created a family, and they trusted each other and could share ideas. Title I helped us get a new science lab, so that really gave us an opportunity to do some hands-on investigations. We did departmentalize in 5th grade, which was the first time that we'd done that, and the teachers loved it and wanted to continue. So really, in all areas in 5th grade, we improved, and that was the first year of departmentalization. And we had a wonderful science teacher specialist, Ms. Bickham, who came, answered all the questions, and attended our meetings with the cluster groups. So she was there, provided support. All right, so reading, if you look at that, reading, we went from a 71 to a 77 combined rate. And so one of the things we did notice is that the growth rate, of course, helped us. But while we were speaking on the data, looking at our gap groups, one of the things that we really did well on was our students with disabilities. So if we look at our reading, let me pull it up, it's on my phone. All right, oops. So if we look at reading, and I just happened to, we were talking about it, so I just pulled it up. And last year in reading with students with disabilities, our pass rate was a 58%, and we moved up to 67% this year, which is awesome. Some of the things that we've done is we looped our SPED teacher up. So she moved up to 5th grade this year, so I'm so excited. So she started last year with 3rd grade, moved up with 4th grade, and the gen ed classroom teacher moved with her. So the kids have consistency, exactly where to start the year at. So this will be our 3rd year of doing that. And that group has done much better than the other groups, but the other ones also increased. But that group especially did really well. Okay. All right, and then let me go back where I was. All right, and then one of the things for reading, we did collaborative planning. I'm a big advocate on balancing home and work. So our idea is to really retain teachers, we plan during planning. So when we leave, we have a Google document, everyone has a role, their shared reading plans and shared math plans for the following week are done. So all they have to worry about are guided, and then science and social studies. And we're in for grades that struggle, we actually meet an extra day to finish those too. But that really, we've got it like down to a science. At first, we would like have half of it done. By May, everything was done. Like, we'd have 5 minutes to spare. So we were really moving on out. Everybody came prepared. And guess what? That's less that you have to do at home. So I really could see our morale improve with that. We did concentrate on just getting the students to read on grade level. We didn't worry about the SOLs. We're looking at K-5, getting students to read, be where they need to be, hitting the benchmarks. What can we do? Our pre-K teachers help tutor our kindergarten students that are struggling while the pre-K teachers or the students are napping. So everybody has a hand in it. Mm-hmm. And then one of our big summarizing strategies that we used last year that we could really see is Somebody Wanted But So Then. And it's just a summarizing strategy, and it really helped kind of, bring things to life for the students. So that was, I think that worked really well. All right, so math. So math, we're looking at last year 68%. So we just missed it in reading and math last year. And so now with the combined rate up to 78%. So a lot of that kind of ties in with reading the collaborative planning. One of the things we did is talking about misconceptions, trying to get that just in Tier 1 instruction, addressing it right away. We did a lot of small group instruction, so a lot of guided groups. We did unit tests, so we stopped testing monthly, we moved them to the end of the unit. So that worked really well, and we had some great team teaching teams. So 3rd, 4th, and 5th was departmentalized, 3rd and 4th team. So there's 4, and then they do reading math, and then they rotate half a day. And then the looping that, like I kind of explained that before, and then our 3rd grade, this year our 3rd grade teacher, I talked her up to move in 4th grade. So we're doing it again on our next round. Okay, so I was just thinking about the different things we've done just to kind of change the culture at the school, and we do Class Dojo school-wide. That has helped a lot with just increasing the communication. When I got to Norview, parents didn't come. Like, if I have a dance or whatever, they'll come, but now I'm like, hey, how do I get them in the building? How can I make you feel comfortable into coming? So I think that Class Dojo at the end, so it's just like Facebook, but in the class. So you can inbox me, they'll inbox me, with a question, and we'll just post quick, pictures of the day. So most of the parents, we have 98% of the parents on, which is great. So at the end, Dojo had like a little survey to the parents, hey, how did you like this? And every one of them were like, we felt connected, we knew what was going on, I love seeing my baby at work during the day, so it was nice. And only the parents of that class could see your class. And then we had like a school one that was general. Like if we're like, okay, remember today is no uniform and our theme is this, it would go out on that. Okay, and then color houses, that was tied in with our dojo for points. So kind of similar to like the Ron Clark color house system or old school Catholic schools, Harry Potter. Yeah. So we did is we really wanted to concentrate on the all-around student. We noticed our discipline data was not that great. Kids weren't being kind to each other, just really wanted to teach manners and really highlight the positives. So the first week of school, our resource team got an obstacle course together. Everybody went through the obstacle course. When they finished, they drew a stick, and that's the color house they were in for the year. It's a mixture of K-5. So one color house would be a mixture, and the teachers had to do it too. So if they were all mixed up, you wouldn't be with your own class, maybe some of the students, and then we met once a month, and we had a monthly house meeting. And your point system from the dojo points, we added them up for the week in the winter, was announced, and they got a DJ. So we had a DJ come once a month and just had a really good time. So that really helped motivate, positive behavior. We do a treat cart and a wall of fame. So like after each monthly assessment or DBA, I have a treat cart that goes around. Anyone that scored 70 or above or grew 10 points from the previous test got to choose from the treat cart. And the wall of fame was, we have a picture wall, so anyone that's passed the test, whether it's any subject, they would take a picture of their teacher. And so it'll say like Reading Rocks, and it's up on the wall. So it's so funny, parents would come in and be like, hey, you're under here in math and reading, what happened to science? You're not up here for science. So it really got them to understand, academically what we're looking for. We did look at a lot of alternatives to suspension. We have a garden, we have cleanup crew, we try to do different things with parents' permission, of course. So just looking at, okay, what can I do? Oh, we want to throw food in the cafeteria? I've got a lovely broom and a dust thing, we can go clean up. So parents were on board, and then it usually took once, and then they were good to go after that. All right, we started basketball and cheerleading and Girls on the Run. So Girls on the Run, this was our first year. Basketball and cheerleading was the second year, which is another alternative. If there's misbehavior, I can take away a game. I can have them sit a half, something like that. And that hurt them worse than anything I could have done. All right, and then community partners. We have a great partnership with LEC, Life Enrichment Center, so they're actually updating our lab this year, and they come in once a week to tutor our first graders. So looking at their PALS data, everybody increased. It may not have been at benchmark, but everyone increased. And another partner is Grace Bible Church. One of the things I'm not good at is celebrating and doing, stuff like that, so they really helped me with that, and our partner was like, Ms. Capel, it's time. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So they do a lot of stuff inside the school and with students. All right, and then we do a Teacher of the Month, just trying to keep morale up so the teachers vote on another teacher for the month that they think that has done a good job. So they get a T-shirt, and they can wear that T-shirt in jeans any day. So if they want to wear it all 5 days, they can wear it all 5 days. All right. Having more of a social media presence. My assistant principal does Instagram, and I do Twitter, so we just really try to tweet out and show what's going on in the school. And we really worked on administrative walkthroughs. We were talking about CERN. I just finished my second year and graduated from CERN, but I think that it was so great about feedback and just, how to provide feedback without making the teacher feel like I'm like you. We're looking at students and what students are doing. So my AP and I do at least 15 a week, and they're short 5 to 10 minute walkthroughs with an email. And I see so much more doing that than I do a long 30-minute, formal evaluation. So that really was on it. And the kids are used to seeing us now. Like before, they would freeze. Now we just go sit down and go with them. So I just try to include some pictures so you can kind of see what's going on. In the top right, that's our gentlemen's club. Our assistant principal is Mr. Jackson, and he found some boys that maybe their discipline data and the academics weren't moving as fast, so they met once a month, and we also had a member of Grace Bible that came with them, and they did different things like, just showing good manners and different things like that. The basketball team, we ended up placing 5th. Go basketball. All right, we have safety patrol we brought back just to help out in the hallways, and it's so funny because the main ones I have to talk to during the day are great at safety patrol. Please slow down, move to the right. So they do a great job. And you can see one of our Wall of Fame pictures at the bottom where it says Math Rocks. I have my two little buddies in the bottom. They did a math challenge, and they ended up going to Alabama, and they placed in the top 20 of the nations. They really did a great job. So we're really ahead of a lot of other states, so that was just really awesome. And that's Girls on the Run on the bottom left, and then our garden, we struggled. We're much better now. We've got great cucumbers and tomatoes coming on. Last year it was ugly. All right, and then just a couple more. If you notice the Harry Potter flags in the middle, those are our dojo points, so we change them every week. So you're looking on place value. They're really out there trying to get it, and they're loved because the kids will be like, the greenhouse was like the Bulls from the 90s. They won every month but 2. So we're like, we've got to beat the greenhouse. But they did a great job of different stuff. And then if you look at the top right, that's a color house activity. And the top middle, they each had to put themselves in order for the birthday. It's just a lot of team building stuff, and just really how to be nice to each other. A lot of role playing and things like that. And that is it.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll hear from Mr. Fraley from Northside Middle School.
I don't know how to work one of these. I'm just being honest. Good evening. I'll just start with the things we do. And I'm kind of like Robert Marzano. I'm like a master of the obvious. I don't have any secrets. We just do things consistently on a regular basis. We've created a system of data-driven instruction, and we use it to drive our daily instructional models. So I'll go through this as succinctly as I can. The first one is hire the right people and place them in the right place. This is the time of the year that I have to remind all my staff. I get asked every day, are we fully staffed? And I say, nope, but it's all gonna work out. Because I believe if you hire a warm body, you're gonna get warm body results. And I'd rather run short-handed. So we're gonna be fully staffed as soon as the right person walks in the door. We have counselors who serve students' needs and course requests. We have a diverse group of kids. They have a lot of interests. I spend a lot of time in my counselor's office making sure we serve kids. We call them in, we listen to their needs, we ask them what they want, and we create course requests for those needs that they share with us. I'm really serious about a master schedule. Many assistant principals do their master schedule throughout our district. I do the master schedule because I think that's the most important thing we do every year, and it predicates your results. Right people, right place, right kids in the right classes where they want to be, and everybody is served. We look at student abilities and needs, and we allow, as far as creating a master schedule, we allow daily content team planning for each group. So all the 6th grade teachers are off a specific bell every day. All the 7th grade teachers are off a specific bell. All the elective teachers are off and the 8th grade teachers. That allows for 8th grade math to plan with 8th grade math, 8th grade science, and everyone has 60 minutes of uninterrupted planning every day, or 300 minutes a week. And it drives our planning, and it keeps our lessons focused because they have the time to do that. We can also do vertical team meetings because the whole grade level is off at the same time. If they all want to get together to serve kids, then they can do that at that time. We have a comprehensive data-driven instructional model. We have a very extensive, I'll call it a test database. We have been working for the last 11 years to create that. We have a CFA for every unit for all 19 content teams that we track in our middle school. And it is aligned to the curriculum, and it is as rigorous as an SOL test. And we believe if those two things occur, and that if you test 95% of the kids, that your outcomes are something you can use as predictable data. So you'll know exactly where you're going to wind up at the end of the year. Our daily instruction model that provides reteaching and new direct instruction. If you would change that for me, I'd appreciate it. So our daily instruction, thank you, sir.
That's good.
I usually do the talking and other people do the clicker for me.
I don't mind clicking.
I appreciate that. I just say easy as 3, 2, 1. So we have a specific model to consume our 86 minutes bells. So the 3 is how we start every lesson. It's 15 to 20 minutes, the start of every class we have, and it's focused on the most recent exposed skill gaps, whether it's through a CFA, a DBA, or what I'll call a quiz. Now, a CFA is a unit test. We refer to them as common formative assessments. A DBA is a district benchmark assessment. So these are all tested by objective mastery strands. So when we get our outcomes and we look in SchoolNet, it tells us who mastered each strand or each substrand and who did not. And so we have a laser light focus on what we can continue to reteach in that segment of the lesson. The 2. So at the end of every lesson, let's just jump to the end. You see where it says exit ticket? All right, I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'm going to come back to the 2. I'm just trying to set that up. The 2 is the review of the exit ticket from the close of the lesson the day before. So that could be something as short as an affirmation, hey, y'all rock this, we don't even need to go over it, or a really short reteach session. And then we do the 1, which is the new direct instruction for the day, and we use the gradual release model. And in old school teaching, it was I do, we do, you do. So the teacher models, then we worked on it together, and then the you do is where the kids are charged by the teacher to complete the activity that they plan. And this activity that is hopefully aligned to the scope and sequence guide and the essential knowledge and skill, so that the active practice creates mastery understanding. The exit ticket is just 5 minutes and is a short assessment of what we taught for the Tier 1 instruction for the day. So we call it the 3-2-1 model. I created it about 5 years ago after going to an RTI session, and I realized that it was a smart way to break down an 86-minute bell. And one of the other things is I've run 2 Title I schools in a row. One of the biggest challenges is when that bell rings at 2 to 45, our kids don't want to stay for after-school support. So we created a reteach model of instruction for daily activity, daily instruction, so that every day is a reteach opportunity. And it just continues in a cycle. Our data, we do comprehensive data packets, as I alluded to a few moments ago. We track 4 groups, the red, the yellow, and the green. And then I'm not sure if you all are aware of what an SOL cut score is, but each content team has a different pass threshold per SOL test. And so we equate the 4th category we track by that cut score. And that's where I was referring to predictable data. If you have a large quantity of kids that score in that cut score, you know that you're in good shape by that content team, and that's why we do data-driven instruction. We can predict our outcomes. We can support the daily instruction model. When we identify the most missed things, that becomes our Tier 3 instruction. So when I review a data packet and then I go in and observe a class, I take the data packet with me, and when it says the 3 things we missed the most, I expect to see those in the first 15 minutes of instruction that day. And it creates a continual system of teach, assess, reteach, assess, reteach, and it's just a cycle. You can walk into a math class for 6th grade, and I don't care if it's September or if it's April, they could be doing fractions. I mean, there are certain things that mastery understanding doesn't come like you'd like it to. In science, the scientific method, they struggle with independent variable, dependent variable. So you can walk into a science class and you can see a lot of that all year long. But anyhow, that's the system we use for continual improvement, and it served us well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now we'll hear from Letitia Wade Jenkins from Lake Taylor High School.
Good afternoon, Dr. Gabriel, members of the school board, and Dr. Boone. I am Letitia Wade Jenkins, the proud principal of Lake Taylor High School, home of the Mighty Titans. Thanks for allowing me to share the great things that we have going on at Lake Taylor High School. As educators, we recognize that whether you are a school that's fully accredited or working towards accreditation, that you never truly ever arrive. You're always in the school improvement process. And so although we have not arrived at Lake Taylor High School, we are definitely trending in the right direction. I'm getting ready to start my 3rd year at Lake Taylor High School. When I arrived 2 years ago, I really had to work with the team to really ask questions. Where are we with our Tier 1 instruction? It's really easy to get caught up in reteaching and providing remediation, but we really had to take a hard look at where we were with providing that Tier 1 instruction to students on a daily basis. And so we needed to identify those things that we could put in place in order to strengthen Tier 1 instruction to accelerate student learning at Lake Taylor High School. And out of that, we were able to identify 3 areas: alignment of the written, taught, and tested curriculum, as well as engagement, making sure that students are actively engaged in the learning process and that teachers serve as more facilitators in the learning process. And we also looked at refining our use of the high-yield instructional strategies. As far as looking at the written, taught, and tested curriculum, we really did a lot of staff development on training teachers how to unpack the curriculum standards, making sure that they could identify what students needed to know and do according to the state standards. We provided a lot of support during the collaborative planning. Content coordinators came out as well as teacher specialists to provide that support. We also provided support with lesson plan development. We also have common planning at Lake Taylor High School, and teachers during that planning process, after they've unpacked those curriculum standards, they work on developing the lesson plans and are able to talk through the lesson activities that they have developed. We also increased the number of observations, the administrative team, as well as increased the feedback that we provided to teachers on an ongoing basis. As far as the tested curriculum, we focused on common formative assessments, making sure that they were fully aligned to what students needed to know need to know and do according to the state standards. And we also revised our data team process. We call them data think tank sessions at Lake Taylor High School, where the content teams come in and they work with administrators to kind of unpack that data, look at where students are scoring well, and also looking at those misconceptions that students have and developing interventions and next steps. As far as student engagement is concerned, I'm also a part of the CERN Principal Academy, and so we adopted the CERN Student Engagement Walkthrough. And with this, we really began to provide training to the instructional leadership team so that we could be aligned with those student engagement look-fors and the feedback that we provided teachers. Afterwards, we had teacher teams to go around and observe each other so that they could give feedback to their colleagues. And with these student engagement focus walks, we really focused on what the students were doing in the class and how the students were responding to the instruction that was being delivered. As far as our high-yield strategies in our work with focus schools, we decided that we should really focus on reading as well as critical thinking skills. So we adopted several strategies that we committed to using. We provided extensive training on that, and the strategies are vocabulary word attack, CERN power tools, that's before, during, and after reading strategies, as well as the use of graphic organizers. So we provided staff development in several ways. It was in small groups, during department meetings, faculty meetings. We also had teachers to share strategies that they used in their class and had success with those strategies. So, with the shared focus and the commitment to the overall goal, we have experienced gains at Lake Taylor High School. We had a 11% gain over the last 2 years in English, and that's the combined rate with reading and writing. We've gone from 78 to 89% over the last 2 years, and according to the new accreditation system, we received a level 1 rating for that. In math, we were able to reduce the failure rate by 12%, so we were able to move this year, based upon the preliminary data, from level 3 to level 2, red to yellow, in both areas, academic achievement as well as the academic gap group. And in science, we had a 7% gain. From 63 to 70%. We moved from level 3 to level 1. And so, again, we have great things that are happening at Lake Taylor High School, and I just want to thank the students, the teachers, for their shared commitment, and great things are to come over the 2018-19 school year. Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce Ms. Berg from Maury High School.
I'll let you click.
Let me click. I don't mind clicking. The community clicker.
There we go. Good afternoon, Dr. Gabriel, Dr. Boone, members of the board. Those of you who know me know that there's nothing more that I want to talk about other than Maury High School, so I was quickly reeled in a little bit, Karen, make it short and sweet, because I can go on and on about the wonderful things that the families and the students and the teachers do at Maury High School. But we're going to focus today on some shared commitments that everyone has agreed upon. Through our work with focus schools over the course of the last couple years, we've worked real hard on identifying which strategies work and sticking with it. We're not getting on a truck and getting back on. We're going to come up with something collectively as a group. My entire faculty sat down. We started with 50 strategies, narrowed it. So this is the committed strategies that we use at Maury High School in the classroom every single day. We are committed to a school-wide focus of effective questioning, cooperative learning, and modeling that will encourage and promote student engagement during the teaching and learning process. This is posted all over Maury High School, every door you see. So in addition to that, focus schools encouraged us to come up with a logo. So what's our logo? Click. At Maury High School, we have class. Commodores learning by asking, showing, and sharing. Actually, next week at the field day, Maury High School staff all now have new shirts And everyone has to believe in it. Everything I send to my families, everything that comes out of Moy High School, we now have that logo. And it's all built on, yes, we do have class. And we are proud that we are Norfolk Public Schools, and we are proud that we are Commodores. So we are very successful in many, many ways, and I'm very thankful for that. Yes, Mr. Clanton, we know you're a Commodore. But you have to look carefully at every student, and what are we doing for all kids? And how are we reaching all kids? My instructional leadership team meets every other week, and we dive into the data, and how can we change things? And you will see with this data that, and it was already addressed several times, there are issues with students with disabilities. So what can we do to help the students with disabilities across the board? So you will see, if you look at the trends in the data, and this, of course, is the preliminary data that we're looking at unadjusted for the 17-18 school year, you will see that, yeah, there was a problem, okay? Even at the wonderful Moy High School, there was a problem. We're not reaching all the kids. So what can we do to reach all these kids? And you will see that this year we are extremely, I think I talked to Dr. Bailey and Mr. Coleman as soon as we saw, 80% of my special education students passed the writing SOL. 80%. It's humongous, okay? When 2 years ago they were at 56. So how do you do it? You build relationships with kids. You build relationships with teachers. If you don't have it, you have nothing, okay? So how did we build those relationships? What strategies did we do? We sat down and we talked about it. What can we do to reach these kids? I get a relationship with a child for 9 months, and then it goes away. And I think this is similar to what Kathy was saying that they're doing at the elementary school. The English 10 team and the English 11 team got together, and I allow my teachers to do their job. I don't micromanage them. They come to work every day, and they work really hard. What can we do? How can we fix this? We want the same kids. I taught them in 10th grade. I want that same group of special education students, and I'm going to handpick a couple of regular education students. I want them in the 11th grade. I want that ownership, because you can't say, oh, well, they didn't teach them this in the 10th grade. Well, you got those same kids. This is the first year. Look at the results. It's so good, and the teams are so good, that, and I think someone asked the question, yes, they are presenting to Gwen's group. They've been asked to present. They've done it multiple times. What are they doing? They're creating relationships with kids. They know their strengths and their weaknesses across the board. That's what it's all about. Because if we don't know that, we're not getting any better. The English 11 teachers all have common planning every other day. They meet together. The expectation is they will meet, and they talk about kids. They don't talk about what's on TV. They talk about kids. The collaboration teams are consistent. We're not changing special education teachers every year, because if the two of us don't have a relationship, we can't teach either, because they have to get along. You can't decide for them. You have to look at your staff and see who you have and what fits. You can't put a circle with a square, because it's not going to work. And who's going to be penalized? The kids. The English 11 teams also have common planning with a special education teacher. If they're not included in it, you're not getting anywhere. When we create these teams, consistent relationships now built with the guidance counselor for that child. It's built with the family for that child. It's built with the case manager for that child, because that case manager might not be in that class. But I've got 2 years' worth of consistent relationships. I was able to purchase Chromebooks for all of the English 11 classes. They were asking for it. The teachers wanted it. The kids wanted it. So who was the great person when I walked up there with the cart? Oh, yeah, I was the hero. But the teachers did the work, okay? English 11 support classes. So my students that have been identified with a disability have a separate English 11 support class. And what we've done is they have it on the day they don't have English 11. So they're getting English every day. So they don't get that whole 90-minute gap the next day. So that's built in. And guess who it's taught by? The special education teacher that's in their English 11 and English 10 class. Still built on the relationship, so that teacher knows what the strengths and the weaknesses are. We do year-long Saturday remediation from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock for extra help. Anybody's welcome to come, and they come. The kids come. They want to be in the school. They want to be with the teachers because they have those relationships. We do after-school remediation on Mondays and Wednesday afternoons. They come. I think I have 9 after-school buses. The kids come. They want to be there. They don't want to go home. They want to be at school. Similar to what Mr. Fraley said, we look at data all the time, but you have to look at it all the time. You can't look at it once a month because you're way past it. We're instituting a whole new data analysis form this year at Maury High School where we have to look at data right away, and then what are we doing the next day? Because why am I moving forward when the kid didn't know how, like, we don't know fractions, we can't go on. So we have a whole new form that we have created that the teachers are going to be able to and have to, I can put data in a notebook and it looks really pretty, but how are we changing instruction? So the teachers and the instructional leadership team created a document that will show how we are changing instruction on a daily basis and how are we addressing the needs of those children. Very important is, of course, what are we doing to support the theory of action in Norfolk Public Schools at Maury High School? Rigor, I had 113 students earn pass advance on the writing SOL. 113. Literacy, 80% of my special education students pass the English 11 writing. Leadership, there's a very shared leadership at Maury High School. They make all of the decisions. The instructional leadership team makes the decision. I've worked really hard personally to back away and allow my leaders to lead. It's kind of hard for me. You can tell I'm a little bit of a control freak, but I've allowed them to do that, and they've thrived. Innovation, purchase Chromebooks, which supports Mastery in English 11. There are great things that go on at Maury High School every day, and it's all because of the teachers. They're the ones that do it. Of course, we have some challenges this year. I think I have 16 new teachers, which is a challenge across the board. And as you guys know, and if Dr. Boone says the baby's ugly, I'm losing them to the other cities. So that's hard. I think I have 8 new math teachers. They're not leaving Maury because they don't want to be at Maury. Everybody wants to be at Maury High School because it's a wonderful place. So I just have to, I have to put that plug out there for my kids and for everything. So that's the work that's going on at Maury High School.
And if I can then, Dr. Gabriel and the board members, to just think about the closing of what you've heard from 4 of our outstanding school-based leaders. You've heard a few things. Let me do them this way. You've heard about common focus practices, not a cookie-cutter approach that everybody looks the same, but how is everybody thinking the same about what will make a practice or what's the right practice for my individual school climate and culture. You heard a great deal about the role of collaborative and team planning and how we get it done. So it's not about just saying you aren't doing it, but how do you bring those teachers to the table and validate their leadership as teachers to make this happen, and that value of those collaborative conversations. Strategic and effective data utilization. Again, not just saying we have a data model, but being able to show what changes have resulted because of the data and because of the attention to data. Throughout all of the presentations, you heard of student-focused instruction. What makes a difference for the students? And we heard your commercial, Karen. We continue to work on that too. Professional development and feedback. Again, aligned and focused professional development to meet the goals and the data needs of the schools and the instructional practices that they're investing in, not going all over the place. We talk about a mile wide and an inch deep, or a mile deep and an inch wide. These schools are doing the inch deep one, if you going deeper, much deeper, and narrowing their focus. And I think finally, again, what ties all of this together is that you heard the focus on teaching and learning, which is really what drives student achievement. You can do a lot of things to pass the test. You can do a lot of test prep, but it is quality teaching and learning that drives the results that these schools have gotten. Are all of our schools at this place? No, but are all of our schools beginning to incorporate these practices and this mindset? Absolutely. And what you have before you today in terms of 2 groups of principals. We have a veteran set of principals here, and we have a set of, I guess no longer novice as you go into your 3rd year, but early in their principal leadership careers. And yet you see the excitement and the energy from both groups in terms of how we're focused on the work to improve overall student achievement. So I want to thank them and members of the the content coordinator, the curriculum and instruction folks for their work. So I know they're here, and if there are questions that, you know, we have all of our content folks here, but if there are questions that you all have for the principals or others, I'm quite sure they're pleased to entertain those.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, Ms. Basine?
I wonder if you could address how, because we know the achievement gaps that we talked about earlier overall in the district, you know, are occurring at different levels in each of our schools. Can you speak to that a little bit in each of your schools as to how, what you think is driving it and what you might be doing to address it?
I think the achievement, you know, I can look at my data and there's gaps. It truly has to be, it's a relationship piece, and I know that might sound like a cookie cutter, but if you don't have a relationship with students and families, they're not going to get any better. And we have to know who they are. We have to know what their challenges are. Why is it that Johnny's not coming to school? Why is it that the family can't do? And if we don't have those relationships, we're not getting any better. And it starts, you know, at the pre-K and what we're doing for those pre-K kids. It's going to make it better. I'm sure that Ms. Campson, when she was in her school, she knew all of her students, and she knew all of their strengths and their weaknesses. We have to know that. It truly is boots on the ground. And it has to be, you know, as Ms. Wade Jenkins done, and they've made tremendous gains at Lake Tahoe High School. It doesn't happen overnight. But as long as we are continuing to trend in the right direction, we're going to make it. But we have to believe in ourselves, and we have to believe in our kids and our families. And sometimes it's hard. You know, we have to be the champions for our district, and we have to be the ones to continue to tell our stories. And we just have to notice what those are, and you have to know when they come to us, what is it they need.
And also, if I may add, as part of the district-wide focus that we have on school improvement, all of our schools have instructional leadership teams that meet once a month. And one of the things that they focus on is creating what we refer to as SMART E-goals that allow us to create a goal for each specific student. And that's even more compounded but with the state's new accountability measures, where you look at individual students and their individual growth. So doing that in and of itself will assist with addressing those gaps, because you will look no longer at the aggregate as a whole. You'll look at individual students and meet them where they are and take them a full year out as planned by their SMART goals.
And I would also say, looking at the data on a daily basis and providing those interventions earlier, sooner rather than later, also helps with closing those achievement gaps.
Sometimes communal themes. We're working on vocabulary acquisition, because we have students, you know, here, students can't read. Well, they can decode, they can enunciate, their diction's pretty fair. But when they're done reading a segment, you say, tell me what you just read. They don't know what they read because they have such huge gaps in vocabulary. So what we're focused on, and what seems to be making a difference for our special needs students, is growing their tool belt of vocabulary words. So we've incorporated a Frayer model, which is they listen to, I have a big voice, they listen to the word, and then they look up the dictionary term for the word, and then they use it in a sentence, and then we ask them to draw a picture of it. And we have these lists of words that we researched for the most commonly missed words by specific grade levels, and we've made it a school-wide theme. And the teachers' feedback to me is they believe that it's our, you know, we put our feet in the sand and we've held our ground, and now it's making a difference. And the kids seem to be benefiting from it. And then the other thing, everybody knows me as the data guy. If you're not looking at data and you're not truly identifying where there's skill gaps daily, weekly, by unit, and continually reteaching them and using different strategies to reteach them, then you're not going to make up any ground at all. So those are some of the things I would throw in there.
And just to piggyback on the elementary side, it just goes back to the literacy model. I feel like that K2 is so important, and just looking at that strong Tier 1 instruction with formative assessment. Don't wait till the lesson is over to make sure the kids are following you. Asking questions along the way, allowing the students to share their thinking with each other, and less teacher talk, more student dialogue to explain their thinking. So it starts, in the beginning, it starts with us.
I loved your word nerds because it falls right into our vocabulary acquisition. I think the more that we can grow that, the bigger our progress will.
And one of the reasons we chose vocabulary is I was looking at the data, and I don't remember the exact number, but by third grade, if our students don't have a certain number of words, their chances to be in a lower, being economically disadvantaged are 100 times any other student. So that really goes to show you how important vocabulary is.
I had one comment and then a question. Another common theme that I also noticed, Dr. Boone, was how each of you, and I could hear it in your description of your school, have really identified with the culture of your students. You first looked at that and said, where can I go to reach them, and then bring them along. And again, that goes with the theme of relationship building. The other common theme was how critical it was to have that continued relationship building with your teachers and your staff. And Ms. Berg, I heard your strong desire for teacher retention. But so it's good for us to hear things like that, especially as Dr. Broom brings her recommendations to us for budget planning, because teacher retention, we know it's critical, but hearing from you all how you're looping your teachers from one grade to the next and how you're doing that common planning and having that consistent basis. So if there's anything else that you would like to share with us about how valuable it was to have a veteran staff or returning teachers, share that with us, because that's going to help us to employ better strategies as we build our budget and support what we already have.
And of course, the veteran is the one that does a good job, and the neighboring districts don't want the teacher that's not any good. They don't even call me anymore. They don't ask for recommendations. If they're in my building, especially if they're teaching an advanced placement class, they're gone. Virginia Beach doesn't even call me. They go based on the performance that's happening in my school. So this year alone, I've lost 6 AP teachers. So now I had to spend all of my professional development money is already spent, because I had to send those teachers to training this summer, because I have new teachers teaching advanced placement classes. I have none. My office manager told me yesterday, you have no more money left in professional development because you had to send these people to training this summer. And it takes 3 years, all the content coordinators can tell you, it takes 3 years in the classroom to be a successful advanced placement teacher. I taught AP, I know. I can walk the walk and talk the talk. And U.S. News and World Report, as you know, says I'm the #2 performing school south of Richmond. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen this year. How's it going to happen? I have all these new teachers. We gave over 1,000 AP tests, and 92% of those kids had a qualifying score. 92%, it's humongous. $19 million in scholarships, 176 honor graduates out of 342 kids. But you can't do that with, and I don't mean any disrespect to brand new teachers, but someone who's just coming into the profession, they can't produce those results. They're 1 in a million. That truly gifted educator is 1 in a million. So it's critical for all levels. And people want to work at Maury, and I hate it when they leave, and they come in my office and they're in tears, and they're like, I don't want to go, but I'm a single woman, and they're putting me on my step, and I'm going to make $10,000 more. What do I say? Now you don't have to work night school, day school, Saturday school, Sunday school, and it's just the reality. And I could pull the numbers, and Mr. Billups could pull the numbers, but the number of teachers and department chairmen that I have lost in the last 5 years would shake you to your core.
Dr. Gabriel?
Yes, Mr. Jordan.
Were you done?
I am done. I didn't know if anybody else had any.
And just a comment, Dr. Boone has truly been an advocate for trying to help the teachers and get them where they need to be. And I can speak on that on a personal level, and I can speak on what I have seen. So that transparency that she knows that we're not where we need to be is appreciated in the schoolhouse. So thank you.
And actually, I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit. First, I'd like to thank the principals that are here today and all the principals who are out there working in Norfolk Public Schools. We have the strongest and the toughest and the most resilient. And we have a tendency to always compare Norfolk to other divisions, but we know what you all encounter every day, both on the opportunity side and on the challenge side. And unfortunately, some of you all deal with some real tragedies that come from the neighborhood that flow into the school. And those of you that had to deal with that this past year, just want to thank you for the support that you gave to students and families. Kind of piggybacking on what Ms. Berg just said, Ricky Ross tagged me on Facebook today with an announcement back in 2014 when they got all the petitions signed to go to an elected school board. And listening to the conversation today brings me back to that, because we're a very different board, I believe, in 2018 than what we were in 2014. And so part of going to Ms. Berg's point about teachers and steps and compensation, as a board, we also made some changes with our accountability system, trying to be more focused on student achievement. And so I just want to say that we have heard you and are working on and continue to work on the implementation of our pay and compensation study to get folks on the right step. We tried it back in 2014, 2013, some other time, and we couldn't get the study done right. And as Dr. Boone came in, we asked her to take another crack at it, and now we're into our second year, moving into our third, and been able to also move our city council to be supportive of that. So I just want you to be able to go back and let folks know who may be trying to hang on. We hear them, we hear you, and we're working forward. Something else that was mentioned, I know Ms. Berg mentioned it, she said she doesn't micromanage her staff. And so one of the things that we've been working on board is not micromanaging ours. And we've had serious conversations about how do we take things off the plate. Hopefully we are seeing, and you all are seeing, that that is occurring. And if not, I agree with Dr. Gabriel. We need to hear from you if we aren't, because we have been trying to focus on that. And the other thing that I heard from you all was courageous conversations, whether it's with your staff, with your students, and with your families. And I think we need to also continue that as a board and governance team. So we know we have a lot of work to do. Appreciate the presentation that you've given. I know last year we did this with the school-by-school scores that Ms. Kenson mentioned, and we also had climate survey data at the same time, which allowed us to look at some of the things that you are talking about in terms of how your staff felt and how the students felt, while we could also look at it in the context of your data. And I hope if we look at it again this September, we get an opportunity to have that in context as well, and maybe have some more principals back to share their story. So thank you.
Madam Chair, may I just make a comment? I want to echo thank you all for what you're doing for our children and for our community. You are wonderful examples, and I hope everyone is listening out there. We have a lot to celebrate. I just want to say today I was reading up on children with trauma, and I just want to applaud that each and every one of you are making relationships a priority, not just with your staff, but also with your students. My youngest son is about to start his fourth school in 4 years. And so I look at, you can't judge a child when you see them, or anybody for that matter, and the stresses that they're bringing into that building. And in the Poverty Reduction Commission, we talked a lot about how 70% of the influences of the child happen outside the school, and how we put a lot of pressure on the faculty staff inside the school to make a difference. Right. And you really only have them for a limited time. It sounds like you all are making the most of that time. But when I was reading today, even though you don't know what that child or that person's going through before they walk in that door, and I'm kind of looking at the experiences of my 8-year-old and saying, this is a kind of a form of trauma, and in that it was as we go into that the next transition, I'm trying to prepare him. And of course, we're going to meet with his teachers and go through all that. But we also have to first start with talking to him and finding out how he's assessing all of this change. And one of the things that kept coming up in what I was reading was about relationship building and how important that is, because relationship building, building those relationships then builds trust and then confidence. And one of the things that early on when we made one of our early transitions with my son, his reading score, he skipped a grade, or he went from kindergarten to first grade mid-year, and they assessed his reading score to 3. And he needed to get an 18 within 4 months to go on to second grade. And I will tell you, the staff and of course parental involvement and the resources that we build around him. His within 4 months, and I talked about this on my campaign. Within 4 months, he went from a reading score of a 3 to a 21. And your focus on literacy, again, that's amazing. You're really focusing on the right thing. From my personal experience, I'm not an expert, but I know that if a child can read, that's where that confidence comes from. And if you're working with them, that relation's being built and that trust is being built, that this is the process. If I work hard at this, I can do other things too. So I just want to thank you, and I really hope that as everyone's going back to the classroom in the next month, that the teachers and faculty and staff everywhere take this as an opportunity to lay those foundations of relationship building and trust and see that confidence grow over the next year. So thank you.
Okay. With that, we don't have
Thank
anything
you.
else. Thank you all very much.
Great job. Great job.
And you're not allowed to leave the division.
They're not going anywhere.
All right. I just wanted to remind the board of a couple of dates with regards to accountability information and the resulting timeline. As was shared in your last board meeting a couple of weeks ago on August 22nd, the VDOE will issue a press release of state and division pass rates on that date. And then on September 27th, the state will release state accreditation and federal ratings of schools identified for comprehensive assistance and additional targeted assistance under the ESSA. And just as a reminder, comprehensive assistance and targeted assistance are new terms that are replacing what has been previously known as priority and focus schools. So our comprehensive schools will be those Title I schools that fall in the bottom 5%, and the additional targeted assistance schools will be the following school year, not the 18-19 school year, but the 19-20 school year can be Title I or non-Title I schools that meet challenges in subgroup areas.
And we'll talk about that more as we go into the September meetings.
Sure.
The 2x2s with school board members, as well as the presentations that we'll be doing.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could just also just recap some of the things that I heard from board members as far as items for our next discussion as it pertains to the data in particular, specifically looking at the gaps and maybe having those calculated out. Putting into context climate survey and other data as we have it, voices from the field as we termed it, that was something. And then, is there anything else that I'm missing from points? Ms. Bassi?
We also talked about looking at the finer subgroups within the students with disabilities as well.
They can work on that. Okay.
And additionally, when we were in agenda planning last time, we've mapped out, we tentatively have climate work as part of our October 3rd work session.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've penciled in there. So that will be right on the heels of all of the data being out and being able to discuss the climate piece in relation to that.
And granted, all of this is going to be blended in with our dashboard and implemented within the living, breathing accountability plan that we have, so that we are all essentially singing from the same sheet of music. Ms. Bassi?
I had some additional questions and perhaps points for our future discussion on the SOL results. But I'm curious to know what the correlation is and how reading proficiency or how students are reading on grade level, how that correlates with their performance on the SOL exam? Because I know some of the research that I've looked at, they, students may perform well on a test, but may not be exactly reading on level, and that might show in other subject areas beyond the reading. And I'm curious how that might be influencing the science and math, if it is at all.
Well, I think it's that interesting question, because it's always been the one I've had when we look at phenomenal social studies data, and yet the reading levels don't match. And so I've always tried to figure out how can you pass the history test, because most history tests are not performance-based. We're moving in that direction, and so they're reading and responding. And so that has always concerned me in Virginia. The other piece is some states will equate their state test in reading to being indicative of on-grade level reading. I don't think Virginia, and I'm looking at Dr. Bailey and Gwen Collins, I don't think Virginia has ever made that claim, or at least it didn't used to make that claim. And so we would have to go back and see, what's that differential between test performance and whether or not a student is reading on grade level. We certainly know that from our district benchmark assessments and PALS data, our STAR data, that are literacy assessments. We certainly know where students are in terms of being on grade level. And part of our the focus for our literacy plan was how can we now begin to accelerate students moving on to grade level reading, because as long as we had the significant lag in that, those were the results that we saw, and we did not see that movement. I think, again, I can't say it definitively today. I would have to go look at some more data. But I think certainly as we begin to see making sure we're teaching history and science in our elementary schools, and that we are also doing the application of both, that we continue to see that improve. And when we do, I think that's linked to what happens in literacy. Students are a lot more comfortable to take on those tasks and those opportunities as it relates to literacy and those content.
And on that, so I've just two more. On that, I'd like to know what the influence might be. We talked about teacher retention. If we're seeing a greater number of long-term subs in certain subject areas, and if that's also what influence that has. And that might come up in our 2x2s with looking at our school-by-school data, but I think that would be useful to look at.
And I think, well, too, and one of the things we're very proud of, you saw an article recently that talked about hiring is going much better in our region than we had anticipated. And as you've reviewed dockets, and we'll review one this evening, we have been fortunate to attract a number of veteran teachers into the district. So they may be new to Norfolk, but they aren't new to the classroom. And so we think that gives us a leg up. And we certainly know that the total number of vacancies as of yesterday is less than what our vacancies were last year for elementary altogether. So HR and the principals have done great work in terms of filling those gaps. And again, there was a job fair on Monday the 6th, and we saw a lot of candidates who are coming in. Sometimes people think if you have a job fair this late that you're just getting whoever's left over, but there are some folks that are new to the area, have just decided or just finished some degree work this summer, and they're ready to take that lead into teaching. And so we're very pleased with what we're seeing so far. And like I said, the HR and the principals have done a great job with that. We've heard compliments from the principals in terms of our new application process that allows them to have visibility of a candidate even as HR does the screening for them, so that we can now make contact with candidates sooner than the paper process would do. And so we've heard lots of compliments from the principals about the effectiveness of that and easing the process. So we're beginning to see the time shorten between application and hiring.
And lastly, a couple years ago, and I think it might have been before you arrived, Dr. Boone, but we had looked at SOL pass rates by percentage of economically disadvantaged, and I think it'd be good to revisit that analysis. And I don't know, it's Dr. Bailey. Oh, there you are. I think it'd be good to look at that because I found that data was interesting to see, how our what we term as our higher performing schools, how our economically disadvantaged students in those schools as
Compared
well as our
to
lower performing
within those
schools.
higher performing
Yeah.
schools.
So, yeah. And
That's one of the beauties of the new accreditation and accountability system for the state, because you can't shield behind the aggregate number and just a few subgroups. And because you will be rated, that red, yellow, green, by each of the subgroups, in addition to the performance on the assessments, we're going to be looking at that on a regular basis very closely.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to take a 5-minute break or so, and then we'll go into our closed session. So,
One question before you do that then. Can you just clarify, so what is the process that we're doing with these 2x2s in the timeline? Can you just?
well, we kind of discussed them roughly with Dr. Boone as we met with her, from concerns about the data and board members wanting to have some extra data. Because her time schedule in opening schools is so limited these last few weeks in August, she thought that it would be better if we push it out a little bit into September. That way we would have the data that's allowed to be released by the state, and the other information, but Dr. Boone certainly can speak to what.
Well, I was asking because I was trying to figure out the timing, because I thought at one point the conversation was trying to have them prior to some state release. And I know that's what Ms. Campson was saying. I know last year what we did was, we had the state rollout, state level data. Then at the September work session, we received the school by school data in print, so we had it. We had time to review it. And then at the September work session, that was when we had the school by school data, the climate data, and the voices from the field. So the last issue that you raised was a concern that I was going to have, is if we're trying to schedule the 2x2s at the same time that they're trying to get ready for school opening, what's the difference? Because if we're going to push it out into September, then can we just do it at the September work session where all of us are together? Because I get benefit from hearing from others that if we're doing 2x2s, we'll hear and ask questions and go through things, but you don't necessarily get the full benefit of what the full board is asking and receiving. So I don't know what the timing is and what's been discussed draft-wise, but if that first September work session can kind of follow that model that we've been doing, I think you still have the opportunity to receive the scores prior to the public, or at the same time, however that works. The board has an opportunity to review it and prepare questions. The staff has opportunity to open the schools and get ready and prepare whatever presentations are necessary. And then we can spend, I think last year we set aside maybe an hour and a half in the work session that allowed us to do a deep dive with everybody on the same page together. So I'm just saying, if we aren't going to complete the 2x2s by September anyway, I would just like to offer that the board consider as a whole, just doing it at that September work session where we would have the opportunity of being together and have the chance to review the data ahead of time.
Couple things. Last year, the calendar was in our favor. Because the month came in on a Wednesday, we're running a week ahead of the state in its releases. Last year, the data, as we met with the board both meetings in August, those were days that state data dropped, and we did big presentations. We even did the voices from the field in August also last year. So it's the calendar piece that made us out of sync with the state in August. when the board chair and vice chair and I talk, my goal is to make sure that the board has in advance the school-by-school data that will be released next Wednesday. But I also, and again, we will be able to discuss that, you know, we have an accountability or achievement discussion as part of the September 12th agenda planning. But it's my goal between the opening of school and prior to that September 27th release around the accreditation ratings and the ESSA ratings is where I also wanted to do the 2x2s, because those won't come out until after our second meeting in September, and I didn't want to wait until October 3rd for those discussions to happen. So the 2x2s are in September, again, to have the conversation about what the accreditation ratings look like, what our schools look like under the new accountability system, and what it will look like for ESSA. And so that's my goal, even as we continue to roll out various pieces of the data, both in the board agenda planning and other things.
But in our meeting in September on the 12th?
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that you would do the 2x2s by the first week in September?
No, I'm trying to do the before the 27th, because the second meeting in September is the 19th. Remember, the first week is moved because the first Wednesday meeting is moved because it's the first week of school. So that moved it to the 12th, which is the second. Then our normal third Wednesday meeting is the 19th. The state's next data release as it relates to school accreditation and accountability and ESSA won't be until September 27th. And so I didn't want those gaps to occur with the board, so that's why, again, with the idea of doing the 2x2s in September, so that everybody can have understanding and visibility and conversations about the accountability pieces. Our next opportunity after the 27th of September would be that October 3rd work session, where, again, we pencil in agenda planning, student achievement accreditation, and climate survey.
And Mr. Jordan's.
It's okay.
All right, Ms. Campson.
The reason I requested the 2x2s is so I could get the data much earlier. And certainly not, that's something that I personally need because I need to see what's going on. And so certainly if everyone else doesn't want a 2x2, I don't think that that should exclude those of us who would like to have earlier information. I would have liked to have had what the principals all have in their hands in July, and which is what many districts are doing with their 2x2s. So rather than have a blanket decision that everyone has to wait to get data, the ones that are okay with waiting, they don't need to have to do the 2x2, and that would lessen the burden on Dr. Boone. But for those that would like to see that, and I would like to get something established because July, of course, is way gone, and so this continues for next year, that those board members who are interested in having the data earlier, and I'd like to have seen the school-by-school stuff in July. Certainly they had it in June. So I'd like that to be considered also. And those who don't feel the need, I think it needs to be, we individualize with our children. Maybe we need to individualize with the needs of different members of the board and what we're looking at. And my focus is on academic achievement, and I'd like to look at the data sooner so I can see where we're going.
I understand. I think that every board member has a different level of comfort with the data and understanding the data, and even I had some questions in looking at it, and I might need to have some helper pieces to go along with the new accreditation model that they have, just to constantly go back and revisit. So I think the 2x2s, if you want to have them individually, you can, and if not, it's fine. But I think that allows us to have some more individual time and discussion with Dr. Boone as to what our needs are as individual board members, and I think we're all entitled to that. So, but we don't want to burden the superintendent before school begins, and so we were trying to be cognizant of that, and she was trying to be cognizant of trying to get us information before the general accreditation items came out.
No, I'm with you on that.
That in July.
I'm just trying to just get clear on one thing. So on September 12th, are we saying we will or will not have the school-by-school
We
accreditation
will
data
not.
by the 12th?
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You will have, those are released publicly on the 22nd.
That's
You will
right.
have of August.
Right.
You will have those in advance of that.
Right.
And will allow us to discuss those at the 12th meeting.
Okay, that's what,
But the 27th meeting, and of course, again, I'm always available if you have questions around that, but I'm going to make those data available to the board in advance of the public release on the 22nd. That is my commitment, that is my word, that is my bond, and you all know me well enough, at least the continuing board members, that if I fall short of that, I will let you know that I'm falling short of that. The 27th release, I think, again, the value of the 2x2s in advance of that, it gives us a chance to talk a little bit more about the new model, even though we're going to talk about the new accountability system on October 3rd. That's why I saw, the school-by-school data are important, and that's a way to see it. But when you then take the school-by-school data in relation to the accountability, it's a real meaningful conversation. Again, and even as Dr. Bailey said yesterday, the division testing administrators had a meeting with the state where they're still educating school districts even as they roll out the new accountability system. So every day we're learning something new about this, and so those meetings in September will give that opportunity for that to happen. Ms. Peel will be contacting the board in the coming days to see when we can get those set up, starting the week of the 10th of September, because again, we want to, we need to get schools open that first week, but the week of the 10th of September, we should be able to, then we will be asking what's your availability during that week. It doesn't mean it's just that week only, but what's your availability between then and prior to the 27th, so that we can get 2x2 scheduled. So that was my commitment to the board chair and vice chair.
well, I'm clear then. I think,
I'm not satisfied.
I didn't say I was satisfied. I said I think I'm clear, because I think what I'm hearing is the board will have school-by-school data prior to the 22nd.
Which is next Wednesday.
I understand.
So, and I've been waiting for it for a lot longer than that.
Right, so what I understand is the board will have access to that data by the 22nd. The board will have a conversation together on September the 12th. Then there'll be some 2x2s for some additional, I'll just say, PD around it. And then we'll have an additional discussion around some bigger picture items and the additional things that Dr. Boone described at the October meeting. Is that correct?
That's the plan.
But every board member will know
Okay.
prior to the 27th of September what those ratings are. Part of yes, there are some schools, and as we shared 2 weeks ago, schools can fall under the older accreditation model where you use SOL scores purely and graduation rates, or they can fall under the new model, whichever one gives the school the best advantage. So that's what the state has put in place. We have not heard yet fully of our ESSA standards. Those of us that have been districts that fall under the school improvement, I know it has a new department, we get calls, superintendent gets calls for conversations about if you have schools that fall in that 5% range and what that looks like. And so as of starting this meeting today, I haven't received that call yet as to whether or not our schools fall any of our schools will fall in that 5% window.
Madam Chair, just to the point for Mrs. Campson, if we just put it on the board parking lot, that as we begin to start building out the calendar for next year,
yes.
that we go ahead and start looking if we can't get that information sooner in July, and just plan ahead.
By looking at the information in July, we would not then be squeezing the superintendent's time as she gets ready for opening.
Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Mr. Putz, would you please read the motion for closed session, please?
Move that the members of the school board go into closed session for purposes which are set out in subsection of section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended for discussion or consideration of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of the Norfolk Public Schools pursuant to subsection 2 of the above cited code section. The substance of this section of the motion concerns a monthly personnel docket. The discussion or consideration of disciplinary and any other matters concerning students in Norfolk Public Schools that would involve the disclosure of information contained in a scholastic record pursuant to subsection 2 of the above cited code section. The substance of this section of the motion concerns review of specific student disciplinary decisions. Consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation or other specific legal matters requiring provision of legal advice by counsel pursuant to subsection 7 and 8 of the above cited code section. The substance of this section of the motion refers to the consultation and briefings regarding the matters set out in subsection A and B of this motion and legal issues concerning the publication of information within the school system's crisis management plans. Ms. Basine?
Aye.
Ms. Campson?
Aye.
Mr. Clanton?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Jordan?
Aye.
Dr. Gabriel?
Aye. We're going to adjourn this portion and go into closed session.